Hey guys, so today I want to talk about a topic that is really important to me and very near and dear to my heart. And I've been getting a lot of messages about this topic lately, and I realized that even though I didn't set out the past few weeks to share my experience with anxiety and depression, anxiety specifically, I've been talking about a lot. And like I said, it actually, in the posts that I've done and the videos I've done, I didn't set out to talk about it. It wasn't my original intention. But as I was sharing other parts of my life, it came out that I've struggled with this for many years. And I've been getting a ton of messages. And so I really wanted to cover this topic and really hone in on it today. And I got a specific request from John. Thank you for the request to do a video on this topic. And talk about dealing with anxiety and depression, and specifically when it comes to working out, like how to get into a workout routine and get a workout in and get active and get healthy when you feel anxious and depressed, and it might be the last thing you feel like doing. And I totally get that. So I'm going to dive into that completely today and really focus on anxiety, depression. And before I do so, I'll just quickly recap my experience with it. So I've dealt with these things since my early teenage years, so kind of as far back as I can remember. And in high school, I actually had medication for both depression and anxiety. And thankfully, that was something that even back then, right now, I like to take a very holistic approach to all of my life and my health journey. And even back then, it just didn't feel right. So I'm really grateful that as a teenager, I actually stopped taking those things and started talking to a counselor and kind of worked through them. But it's something that's affected me my whole life, and anxiety specifically ruled my world a few years ago. And that's not an exaggeration. It was really bad, all the time, all day. I'd wake up with it all night. And it really ruled my life and really controlled me. And I look back on those years, it was kind of just like a darker chapter. Those were my last few years competing. The last few years I spent living in New York before I moved back to Wisconsin. I was really struggling with this. And like I said, every day was really ruled by anxiety. And I would never wish it upon anyone, how I was feeling back then. So thankfully, I've learned so much since then, the last couple of years, and I've learned so many ways for me to really deal with it and prevent it. So certain habits I have in place that, like I said, prevent me from even feeling this way in the first place. And I have these habits in place, and sometimes if I get off track with these things that I have in place, if I'm not doing them, I'll have an episode. And I know right away, that's why I can pinpoint, why it happened, because I'm not following up with all these daily habits. So I almost like to think of the things that I do that I have in place in my life as my medication, as natural options for me to stay balanced and feel good and avoid feeling anxious or depressed. So like I said, I think of these things as really non-negotiable, and that doesn't mean I'm perfect. I do fall off more often than I'd like to. And when I fall off, I recognize it and I quickly go back to carrying out all of these habits and getting back on track. But it's usually one of them or a handful of them that kind of fall by the wayside. And then I might be going along, powering through, and all of a sudden a couple days later, it'll just hit me and I'll have an episode and I'll feel really anxious. And I take a step back and say, all right, why am I feeling this way? Let's be honest. I haven't been doing the things that I know are good for me, that I know prevent me from feeling this way. So I'm going to share those habits. And then I could talk so much about this topic, so I actually want to make more videos on it. So then I'm going to go into the workout portion today specifically. But I really wanted to share all the habits that I've put in place the last few years that have made a huge difference, because I highly suggest these, all of them, or as many of them as possible. Start small, start with one. But all of these things have made a huge difference in my life, and I'm the happiest I've ever been, and rarely deal with anxiety now. But again, I can remember and I still feel it creep back in if I'm not doing these things. So the habits that I have in place to fight anxiety and depression are, for one, prayer, my faith, my spiritual life. I believe in God, and I feel like anxiety truly is a lack of faith, and it happens when we are trying to control everything and we feel like we have to carry the weight of everything, and if that makes sense, and we have no faith in anything outside of ourselves to make things work for us or make things happen. So when we're carrying our own burdens too much, or we're trying to control too much, I notice this a lot with me. When I'm depending only on my own strength and nothing outside of myself, then I definitely feel a ton of anxiety, because that's a lot to carry for anyone. If you feel like you're all alone and you have nothing guiding you, no one helping you, you're all on your own, carrying the weight of the world, that is a heavy burden. So prayer for me, my spiritual life, and praying and just saying, hey, I surrender, guide me today. I need you today. Like I said, I believe in God, whatever you believe in, whatever your spiritual beliefs, just really tapping into that and realizing that you're not alone, and you are being guided, and just asking for that guidance and wisdom. For me, on a daily basis, that's a huge, huge thing. And when I fall out of the habit of praying and leaning on that and trusting in that spiritual guidance, that is when I really run into major, major anxiety and depression, and those feelings of not being able to put one foot in front of the other sometimes. So that's a huge one, prayer and faith. Kind of tying in with that, gratitude. I keep a gratitude journal, and every morning as I have my coffee, it's my routine. I like to write down what I'm grateful for that day. And that just puts our mind into a place where we're looking for the good in life. And the more we look for good things in our life that we appreciate and we're grateful for, the more our mind continues to do that through the whole day. So if you start your day with gratitude, like I said, I keep a journal, or maybe if you just want to wake up in the morning and put your hand over your heart and just think of things you're grateful for. But starting the day with gratitude really sets the tone for the whole day, where again, you will be more likely to continue to see things in your world that you're grateful for. And on the days where you are feeling your worst, I know this can be difficult. Like you're just in such a state that you can't even see good things. Like that's the time to take a step back, be really realistic about how blessed you are, as hard as it might feel sometimes. And even just things like some days when I'm in the crummiest of moods, it's like I have clean water and I have healthy food to eat and I have a warm home in the winter. And, even the most basic things in life, if you start recognizing those things and being grateful for those, it will really shift your mood very quickly. And like I said, once you start doing that, you'll go through the day and say, hey, I have this, or hey, I'm grateful for this too. And it really, really shifts your mood and gets you into the right attitude, an attitude of gratitude. And I find that it's so helpful in avoiding anxiety and depression as well. So tying along with that is journaling. So besides my gratitude journal, I also use my journal just to do, I call it a brain dump, and I have my clients do these a lot of times. Anytime you're wrestling with negativity, I feel like it's best to just get it all out on paper. And that's what a brain dump is. Like literally write everything down, even the silliest things, like everything that's in your mind, get it out of your mind and onto paper. Because for one, it feels good to let it out in that capacity. And second, you can then take a step back and kind of look at some of the stuff you wrote down and realize that you're so much bigger than it. You really are. Like these crazy thoughts and feelings, they're not crazy. They're very normal. We all have them as human beings. Anxiety is very normal as a human being. And it's actually an emotion that is trying to protect us from something, whether it's a real danger or a perceived one. It's really just trying to protect us from something. That's where anxiety comes from. Same with self-sabotage. They're in place for a reason. They have a positive intention. But like I said, once we're able to journal it and kind of realize we're bigger than these things that we're worrying about or stressing about, that can be really, really powerful in giving you your power back and being able to step back and say, hey, I'm bigger than that. I'm bigger than this emotion. I'm bigger than this anxiety. And I choose to choose again and choose a higher emotion, a better emotion. Next up, one thing that's made a huge difference in my life, like probably the biggest thing in the past few years, is listening to personal development or reading personal development. So personal development is just, I'm lumping all things that are about personal growth and mindset, all of that stuff, all the information. There's so many amazing books, podcasts. You can listen to audio. I'll do this when I'm driving. I like to listen to educational podcasts and a lot of mindset and personal development work. Like that really, if I stop doing that and I'm not doing my reading, or sometimes I'll get steps on the treadmill, I'll walk and listen to this stuff. And if I'm not doing that a certain amount of days in a week, I always find that I'm like, whoa, I just took a huge step back. I'm feeling really off, really anxious. So listening to that stuff, honestly, the first one, when I was really, really in the worst of my anxiety back in New York, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. I'll link it here. But that was really like the first self-help, you could call it too, but first like personal development book that I read. And back during that time when I was really wrestling with anxiety, it was so life-changing for me. It was such a game changer. I can remember I had quotes like in my car and around the house. Like that was a really powerful one for me. So that's kind of what started my journey with personal development books. But like I said, there's so many good ones out there. I'll try to be conscious of sharing more on my page and on my new website. So, but yeah, listening to that stuff, we're in a time where we have access to that more than ever. So whether you're driving or turn it up while you're getting ready in the morning, like I said, audiobooks are great because then you don't have to sit down and read. I like to read physical books at night, but that's a huge one. And if I fall out of that habit, it affects me pretty quickly. Like I can get away with a couple days, but if I'm not doing that for a whole week, like I said, I feel really out of whack and anxious. And I know it's that. Another one, good sleep. Good sleep is obviously a huge priority because we do feel a lot more emotional and a lot more affected by anxiety and depression if we're not sleeping well. And I know they go hand in hand. If you have these things, you might not be sleeping well because of that. And then it makes it worse, which can be frustrating. And then you get anxiety about sleep. So don't stress yourself out over it. Just try to get into a routine where you're making a conscious effort to kind of stay in the same sleep pattern, try to go to bed a little earlier at night, wind down, shut off the technology. You can't fall asleep when you're constantly on your phone and seeing that light and, connected to all of that. So shut that stuff down, make an evening routine for yourself. I've been diffusing oils lately. My fiance's mom got me super into oils. I'm loving it. And I'll diffuse like a stress away oil or some lavender. I'll diffuse that and I'll read and I'll wind down and relax. Another thing is I drink Natural Calm at night. I'll link that, but I've talked about Natural Calm before. It's a magnesium drink. I make it hot and I have a little cup of that before bed. But if you're not a good sleeper, that's going to definitely impact this. So try to create an evening routine for yourself, a bedtime routine, and at least an hour before you want to fall asleep, start to do all these things. Maybe it's a warm bath or a hot shower or whatever relaxes you and lets you unwind and decompress after a stressful day. Do those things so that you're at least intentionally trying to get better sleep. And then the last one before I go into the health topics would be, this is huge and again, easier said than done, I know, but healthy relationships with honesty and boundaries in your relationships. So that I could talk about a whole nother video for sure. But really just having people in our lives that we can be honest and open with and talk to. And then also that means kind of disconnecting from toxic people and toxic relationships. Back in New York, that was a huge thing. I had a lot of toxic relationships and one by one I disconnected from them. And you can wish people the best, but it doesn't mean they need to be in your life if they're creating a lot of stress, anxiety, drama, all of those things. If they're making you feel any negative emotions, it's time to take a step back and really think about what you want for your life. And sometimes that means closing the door on some of those. And again, wishing them the best, but drawing those lines and having those boundaries for yourself. So then the ones that I talk about most often, obviously because it's my profession, are healthy eating. What we eat very, very much impacts our mood and impacts how our brain works. So that is super important. That's another one I could do a whole nother video. I could talk about nutrition all day, but it's really important to eat healthy to stabilize your mood. Even like sugar, when your blood sugar is out of whack and your sugar is spiking and then crashing. Now I'm going off on a tangent because I do love nutrition. But if it's spiking and crashing, that's going to affect your mood so much too. So reducing sugar gradually, trying to get more healthy fats, fiber, vegetables and greens, trying to get all of those things in. I promise you guys, if you're eating a lot of junk and you start cleaning up your diet, I swear you will feel so much better. So that's another day. I'm going to make a whole video just on that because I could talk about it forever. Finally, I want to talk about working out because, like I said, I got a request from John and he specifically asked about working out and how to get into a routine and work out when you are struggling with these things. Because it might be like the idea of going to a gym might be the most anxiety creating thing you could think of doing. Or, you know, if you feel really depressed, like getting out of bed is hard, or you don't want to do it. I get that, and I've been there. So I would say one thing to do is kind of like a 20-minute compromise for yourself, and just say, I'm going to do 20 minutes of movement, of activity. And this doesn't need to be the best workout ever. This doesn't need to be at a gym. It doesn't need to be with weights. It doesn't need to be anything. It just needs to be some kind of movement. So it could be taking a walk outside. Or if you don't even want to go outside, you don't want to leave the safety and comfort of your own home, that's totally fine. In 2018, we have more videos and apps and amazing things where we can work out at home, zero equipment. So I would suggest choosing the path of least resistance. If you're really struggling to get started with working out because you're dealing with these things, choose the path of least resistance. Like, ask yourself, what is the least stressful choice? Or like, what's the least, like I said, what are you resisting the least? Is it yoga and some gentle stretching and breathing? Is it a walk? I find that walks really give me, especially outside, fresh air, gives me a lot of clarity. It clears my head. You know, is it getting your heart rate up and your blood pumping? I find for stress, and especially if I have like kind of pent up aggression, anger, I love kickboxing, and you can do this. You can do air boxing. You don't need gloves or a bag or equipment for this either. You can look it up online and do air boxing and just punching and, you know, punching away. Sometimes I like to literally think about punching away fears and doubts and anxiety I will literally take that out while boxing. So just think about, you know, what am I feeling right now? Why am I so resistant to moving or working out, and what kind of movement would be best for me today? That, like I said, is the path of least resistance, which would feel the best. And then make yourself a promise, I'll do at least 20 minutes. And if 20 minutes is too much to bear, then tell yourself 15 or 10. But do something and promise yourself you'll do at least that much, and then see how you feel. Because when I make this, a lot of days, you guys, I don't feel like working out. And I do it not even to look a certain way anymore. That's how I got started. Thankfully, that's what got me into this, because my fitness journey, seriously, workouts keep me sane. And that's probably the biggest thing for my mind, to fight anxiety and depression, because you know that you're going to feel better after. We literally release happiness hormones and chemicals in the brain. That's the word I was looking for, but chemicals in the brain that will make you feel happier. So no one ever did a workout and then said, I feel worse now. I mean, maybe tired or exhausted, but mentally you will always feel better. So know that and make that deal with yourself and say, hey, I'm going to do 20 minutes. And what happens most of the time, and when I make this agreement with myself, this compromise, like, okay, I get it. You don't want to do this today, but do 20 minutes and just see what happens. By the time you reach that 20 minutes, guess what? You're going to be feeling better. And then you could say, all right, well, how about 5 more minutes? How about 10 more minutes? And then the next day you feel a little better because now you've released those chemicals, and it's a habit, and you stay with it consistently. Like I said, I keep these habits in place for a reason. And it's about so much more than how I look or a weight or fitting into certain clothes. Those things are all an awesome bonus, but I promise you guys, like, the number one reason I work out the way I do as consistently is for my mind and my mental health and my emotional well-being. So like I said, make yourself that promise that 20 minutes, path of least resistance, whatever feels the best for you that day, just some kind of movement, move your body, get blood flowing. Just get active, and I promise you'll feel better. And then each day that you do it, you'll recognize that, and be sure to tune into that. Say, hey, I did feel better. That took some stress away. That took some anxiety away. I'm feeling a little happier, a little bit less depressed right now. So recognize that, and it creates a new connection in the brain, a connection to exercise that, yeah, this feels good for me. This helps. So be really aware of that connection between movement and your mood. And like I said, you'll be in the same boat as me, and you'll say, I know I need to get my workouts in this many days of the week. Or even, like I said, if I'm not feeling like an intense workout, all right, how about some gentle stretching and yoga and I actually see Leighton just said looking to start yoga thoughts. That's an awesome thing for your body, for your mind, for anxiety, depression. Like those help just for stress relief, because everyone has stress in their lives. In today's world, it's, so I think it's such a good thing. There's so many different types of yoga. I'm getting more and more into it myself this year. I've never been a big yogi. I feel like I have this idea that workouts always have to be super intense, but lately my body's been asking me more and more, listening to that, my body's been asking for like some serious deep stretching. So my favorite kind of yoga, I've done hot yoga for years, and that was really my thing. Now I'm actually kind of switching gears. I'm really into yin yoga, and that's a restorative yoga where you hold poses for like 2 to 5 minutes. You hold them for a really long time. And I find, because I'm such a like go person, that just doing that and holding those poses and having to sit there for this many minutes is really good for me. And then I can finally like relax, and my body releases stress, and I can get deeper into some of the stretches. So that's currently my jam, yin yoga, but there's so many different types. So if you're looking to get into yoga, my advice is to explore all the different types and see what your cup of tea is. But yeah, just really tune into your body and say, what movement would feel the best right now, would feel the best today, and make yourself that promise that you will give yourself the gift of some type of movement every day, even if it's only 20 minutes. Aim for 30. 30 is like the golden number. If you can do more than that, great. But yeah, just get active. And like I said, I swear to you, you'll feel so much better. So I hope this video is helpful. I feel a sense of relief just from talking about it, because like I said, I've gotten a lot of messages, and I'm like, oh wow, I didn't even set out to put that out there. Not that I have any shame over it. I think on that note too, I think with some of these mental health issues with anxiety and depression, I think there is a lot of shame, and it's getting so much better, but there's a lot of secrecy around it too, where people don't talk about it, and maybe people who haven't dealt with it, they don't understand it, and it's something that you can't see. You can see other things, other ailments, and since it's in your mind, people don't understand it if they've never dealt with it before. But I personally have no shame in my journey. I think it's more common. I think I read a stat the other day that said it affects like 80% of adults. So if you're feeling this way, you're so not alone, and I've so been there. And there are so many things that you can do to start feeling better and better every day. And then, like I said, really look at these things as like non-negotiable, as like your must-do things to feel good that will help you either cope with it if you're going through it. Or for me, I've found that if I have all these things lined up, I don't have bad days anymore. I don't have even bad half days or anything. It's awesome, because when I look back a couple years ago, like I said, it really ruled my life, and I was not a happy person, and it made me physically sick. Like that's where my adrenal fatigue came from stress and anxiety. So having all of these things in place, having healthy relationships and connection, tuning into my body and doing the things that I know will have me feeling really good, and just having an attitude of gratitude and praying and asking for God's guidance through the day, even when you're feeling your very worst. Lean on your faith. But all of those things, like I said, it's been a complete 180, and I rarely have episodes of this anymore. So there is hope for you, no matter how bad you're feeling. And I hope this video helped. Like I said, because of the amount of messages I've gotten on this, I'm going to be making a lot more videos kind of segueing into different topics on this. So any specific questions you have, or if you just want to reach out, I am here. I read all my messages, so don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in.